You should be open to prime factorization in your notes. I think some of you might know how to do this, but not everybody. So if we're talking about something called prime factorization, first we need to know what a prime number is. So that's our first blank. A prime number is a whole number that has exactly two factors, one in itself. So that means that you can't divide anything by it except for one in itself and get a whole number. So an example would be, say, 3. Alright, I'm going to write that down here. 3 is an example of a prime number because you can only divide by 1 and 3. If you divide it by 2, you get 1.5, which is a decimal. I don't want a decimal. Some other examples might be 2, because you can only divide by 1 and 2. So just because it's even doesn't mean that it isn't prime. 5, because you can only divide by 1 and 5. 7 is an example. And so the list goes on forever. I want you to write yourself a note that 1 is not prime. 1 is not prime. 1 is special. It's all by itself. It's not prime, and it's not what we're about to call composite. So any number that is not prime is called composite. Okay, so again, 1 is just special, 1's not prime, it's not composite. Composite means you can divide it by something other than 1 in itself. So we're going to look at 4 examples right now to figure out if these numbers are prime or composite. So 31, try to think of a number you can divide by 31. It happens to only be 1 in 31, so it's prime. Part B, 36. 36 you can divide by a lot. You can divide it by 6, you can divide it by 2, 12. So we're going to say that this is composite since you can divide it by things other than 1 in itself. 9 is one that tricks people. 9 is odd, but that doesn't mean that it is prime. 9 is composite because you can divide it by 3. And 23 will be prime. You can't divide it by anything except for 1 in itself. Okay, moving on to the next page. So this section is about prime factorization. We've talked about primes, so now we're talking about prime factorization. So prime factorization is when you write a composite number, so a number you can divide by other things, as a product, so we're going to be multiplying, of primes. We're going to be multiplying primes. So I laid out some steps for you. Step 1 is to write the number that you are factoring at the top. So I'm going to walk through my steps with part A. So I'm going to write 9. Step 2, choose any pair of whole numbers that are factors of the number. And I'm going to write this as a tree diagram. So I'm thinking, what number can I divide by 9? Well, 3 times 3 is 9. So we're thinking what numbers multiply to get 9. Please do not think what numbers add. Think what numbers multiply. Once you have a number that is prime, so 3 is prime, we're going to circle it. Once you circle a number, you are done with your tree diagram. So we're not going to bring anything down with that 3 anymore because it's circled, it's done because it's prime. So once I have all my things circled, I circled the 3 and I circled it 2 times. So the number that is circled is your base, and then the number of times you circled it is your exponent. So this is your answer. And we can always check this. If I do 3 squared, I get 9. And 3 is prime. So you always want your base to be a prime number. Let's look at part B, 56. So I'm thinking, what 2 numbers can I multiply together to get 56? You can do 7 and 8. So I'm looking at both of these numbers and thinking, are either of them prime? 7 is prime, so I'm going to circle it. 8 is not prime, so I'm going to keep factoring it. So I'm thinking, what 2 numbers multiply to get 8? Well, you could use 2 and 4. Please do not use 4 and 4. 4 times 4 is 16, so always remember we are multiplying. 2 is prime, so I circle it, and then 4 can be factored into 2 and 2. 2 is prime, so circle both of them. Now all of my numbers either have a little branch coming off of it, like these little lines, or they're circled, so I'm done. So I'm going to look at the smallest number I circled, which was a 2. I circled it 3 times, so that's my exponent. And we're going to put a multiplication symbol to separate all of our factors. The only other number I circled was a 7, and I circled it once. So that's your final answer. And if you don't want to put the 1 as your exponent, you don't have to. You could also write 2 cubed times just plain 7, because it's the same thing. But if you want to put the 1 there, that's fine too. Let's look at part C. So we're starting with 16. I'm thinking, what two numbers multiply to get 16? We can use 2 and 8. Please do not use 8 and 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So always remember we are multiplying. 2 is prime, so I circle it. 8 is composite, so I'm going to keep factoring it. 8 factors into 2 and 4. 2 is prime, so you circle it. 4 is composite, so keep factoring. 4 can factor into 2 and 2, since 2 times 2 is 4, and both of those are prime. So I circled it 2, circled it 4 times, and that's all I circled, so I'm done. And again, you can check it. If you do 2 to the 4th, you get 16. Part D, 24. And when you come up with your numbers to factor it into, like for instance, part D, we could choose 4 and 6. We could also choose 2 and 12. We could choose 8 and 3. It doesn't matter what you pick as long as those two numbers multiply to get the number we're trying for. So I'm going to use 4 and 6. Neither of these two numbers are prime. They're both composite. So I'm going to keep factoring 4. 4 is going to factor in 2 and 2. 2 is prime, so circle both of them. And 6 factors into 2 and 3. Again, do not put 3 and 3, because 3 times 3 is not 6. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 is prime, so I circled it. 3 is prime, so I circled it. Now, I don't have any other numbers to make those lines with, so I'm going to write my answer. The smallest number I circled was a 2. Circled it 3 times. Put a multiplication symbol. The only other number I circled was a 3, and I circled it once. Okay, moving down, we have 2 more examples. Okay, so we're looking at 50. So I'm thinking, what two numbers multiply to get 50? You could use 2 and 25. I'm going to use 5 and 10. 5 is prime, so circle it. 10 is composite, so keep factoring. 10 can factor into 2 and 5, since 2 times 5 is 10. 2 is prime, circle it. 5 is prime, circle it. So now I'm ready to write my answer. The smallest number I circled was a 2. I circled it once. Times the only other number I circled was 5, and I circled it twice. Part F, 252. Now that's a bigger number, but that's okay. Since that's even, I know that I can divide it by 2. So I have 2 as one factor. Now off to the side, I'm going to figure out what is 252 divided by 2. So 2 goes into 2 once. Bring down the 5. 2 goes into 5 twice to get 4. Subtract to get 1. Bring down the 2. 2 goes into 12 6 times to get a remainder of 0. So 2 times 126. 2 is prime, so I circled it. 126, that's even again, so I know 2 can be a factor. And 126 divided by 2 is going to be 63. 2 is prime, so circle it. I can still factor 63. You can divide 63 by 3. And 3 times 21 is 63. 3 is prime, so circle it. I can still factor 21. And 3 times 7 is 21. And both of those are prime, so we circle them. The smallest number you circled was a 2. Circled it twice. Times the next highest number was a 3. Circled it twice. then I circle this 7 once. So that's your final answer. Okay, so when you are working on either your study island or iExcel or your homework, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I know this is kind of weird, so we will be talking about it more in class tomorrow as well. Just make sure that your homework is ready for me to check. But if you have any questions, please email me.